What's up, everyone? Good afternoon, boys and girls. Just a real quick intro to this video. While I was out at the salvage yard last week, what I was doing there was I had to find the axles off of a Blazer. They are, what I found out, they are about a 1/4 inch shorter than the axles off of a S10. It was actually throwing the spacing off on my when I was installing the brakes. I'll go ahead and tell you now. I did a rear brake conversion to a disc brake instead of drums. What I should have done, well, the best thing was to just get the rear end off, the complete rear end off the Blazer 98 and up. With disc brakes, and I would have been good to go right there, but I had pulled my rear end off of a 2002 S10 and did the rear brake swap using the Blazer brakes. And since the Blazer axles are 1/2 or a 1/4 inch shorter per each side, it was throwing the spacing off on the caliper brackets. While I was out there, sorry to ramble on, but while I was out there at the salvage yard getting these Blazer axles, I stumbled upon, I was just looking at the RPO codes in the glove box on the Blazer, and I found one. It was a G80, had a G80 code with a GT4 code as well. And what that means is it's 373 gears, which is actually my ideal gear set that I'm looking for the Corolla. So I was like, wow. And then the G80 also is 2-wheel peel, so that's like 2 birds with 1 stone right there, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to get that. So that's what this is about. It's just I was doing the on this video I'll be swapping out the differentials, and you also have to switch out the pinion gear as well, otherwise it won't work. You can't use a 323 or 342 gear, a pinion gear with a 373 differential. I'll be doing that, showing you how to set up the pinion preload and everything, painting of the differential. Hopefully we'll get this thing installed. Anyways, I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I know it's been a long process just doing this rear end, but you know, it's that's what it is. It's all about. You know, if it was just a complete swap, it would have been a lot quicker. But me having to do the SR5, mounts and putting them over to the GM rear end, it takes a little bit more work. You're making a jig and everything. You got to get everything set up right. So, like and subscribe if you haven't done so, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. So the first thing that we need to do is install this pinion gear. We have a new bearing. Just going to drop that in place into the race. And this is our new seal that we have. I rented a seal driver from AutoZone. You can do that for free. Just put a little deposit down, loan the tool, and then return it when you're done. Just gonna lightly tap it, and just keep tapping it until the seal is fully seated against the housing. You can hear a slightly different sound whenever you're tapping, whenever it's fully seated. With the seal in, now we're going to install the pinion shaft. We just get this new crush sleeve, a few dollars there from GM. It slides on the shaft and up through the back. The shaft goes to the top. The yoke just slides on the splines of the pinion shaft. Make sure your washer is on before you install the pinion nut. Now, in my opinion, this is the hardest part of the installation. You got to tighten this pinion nut to where there's no play in the yoke and the pinion shaft. I don't know how one would be able to do this without an impact gun. Now the trick is you have to get it tight enough to where there's no play, but not too tight to where it won't spin freely. But it has to be a certain amount of pressure. For GM 7.625, it's measured in inch pounds, and it is 6 to 7 inch pounds on a used pinion nut. Pinion, gear. For a new one, I think it is 12 to 15 inch pounds. And remember, that's inch pounds, not foot pounds. Alright, got the play pretty much out. Actually, I got it all out. You don't want any play in that. Now we're going to take a measurement with the inch pound torque wrench. And it's reading a little bit low, but that's because I don't have the differential installed yet. So once I get that installed, it will be it should be just fine. Alright, it's all installed and looking good. Turning nice. Time to install the differential with the ring gear on it and the bearings and spacers. And here's how I did it. I kind of drop it in place with everything set in the bearings, the races, and the spacers, and just drops right into place. Just gotta make sure you please watch your fingers, because you will definitely cut some fingers if you don't get them out of the way when you drop it. Now I'm just going to use a piece of wood to knock in the spacers a little, all the way, to seat them in all the way. Don't hit too hard, because you don't want to break those spacers or warp them or damage them in any way. Just nice little taps until they're fully seated. Now it's time to do the main bearing caps. And here they're supposed to be set to 60 foot-pounds. Here I'm just going to impact wrench them in, but I'm just going to do it slightly and just to get it set up, and then I'll measure the torque when it's installed in the car. Time to install the brakes. Ooh, nice and fancy. You won't be able to see this anyways. Then you just install the axle and slip the brake rotor on. Add a few lug nuts to make the rotor sit flush against the axle to make it easier to install the caliper. This is all pretty much straightforward. Now we got the brakes installed, at least the calipers, and the rotors. Still need to run the brake lines. So I wanted to just give you a little look at the calipers and the spacing here. You can see the spacing is plenty of room right there. And another thing is some of the Blazers, the brake caliper is on the back side. On the I think it's on the two-wheel drive Blazers. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a big Chevrolet guy, but I did get a set where the calipers were on the back side, and there were issues with this clearing because the shock, the shock would come up from this mount, and if the caliper was here, then it would not clear. So I got the ones that were mounted in the front. If you get the ones that are mounted in the rear, all you have to do is just put this mount on the other side, and it will, and then just flip your caliper upside down to make sure that the bleeder valve is on top. That way you can bleed the brakes properly. So that's all you got to do, really. All right, here's a quick look at the completed rear end with the brake lines installed. And the hard lines, actually, I got these. These were from the SR5. Since this basically is the SR5 layout, it's just they're on a different rear end. So what I did was I just cleaned them up. And right here, it normally would come out some more and do other things and bolt to the drum because it had drum brakes, but what I did was I cut it off right here, and I mounted. Here's the stock bracket, and this is just a bracket that I got from AutoZone, and I mounted the clamp. It clamps the flexible caliper hose, so that's there, and it's nice and sturdy. I cut the brake line right here, and I got the double flaring tool from AutoZone, and was able to end this fitting, slip the fitting on, flared the brake end, and then connected it to the flexible line. And it's all the same. It's the GM. This right here is a GM part, and this is just the aftermarket fitting. And utilize this factory the brake line. Anybody know anything about these? They just came with the car when I bought it. So KYB GR2. I have no idea. Also, here's this is a magnet that I bought at and I'm going to throw that on the outside of the differential cover on the back end. That way, hopefully it'll be strong enough to pick up the metal, whatever, the little shavings or whatever. All right, we're going to move this back to the back of the car. This thing's really heavy, so instead of going into gorilla mode, I'm going to attempt to work smarter and not harder. And I get to save my back a little bit in the process. I knew this mechanic's creeper would come in handy eventually. I set it on here and roll it on back.
前進するのが大事よ。12345みんなで陽気に暮らそう。
Set in place. Now all I got to do is jack the rear end up into place, get the shocks mounted up. But everything's going smooth so far. I'll put you back here so you can see. Hard bars in right there, brake lines, all my 4 links, got the all-important magnet. A little sarcasm there with the magnet, but you know, all I need to do is put the anti-roll bar in right there, those 2 mounts. I'm going to use the one off of the GTS rear end that I had. It's a little bit thicker. The GTS one is a little bit thicker than the SR5, so that's the one I drove. 8 hours to get, because it was supposed to be a GTS housing. It was a GTS housing, but it was bent, so I was unable to use it. And basically it's just scrap metal now, unless someone wants to buy it for the mounts that are on it. But here it is. Feels pretty good to have this finally done, as you can imagine. Right there. Let me see. I guess I can take it off the jack now. See what happens. Oh. All right. Let's take a look. There it is. There it is, right there. Man, that's like straight to it, baby. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Now I just need to find a drive shaft shop so I can have this drive shaft made. But now that I have it mounted, I can take my measurements and be prepared when they ask me. Oh yeah, some of you might be wondering what am I going to do with these? Yeah, those are the e-brake cables. If you remember, a few episodes ago I ended up just cutting those off. Well, what I'm going to do is put an inline hydraulic handbrake in. It'll tie into the existing brake line and have its own little master cylinder right up there by the lever. So that's what I'm going to do. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to make sure you catch all the episodes. Also, again, I just want to say thanks to all my subscribers. You know, it does add some motivation for me to get things done. But I got plenty of motivation anyways, but it does help. So, oh yeah, one thing I was gonna mention, I just hand tighten the bolts right now. They'll be enough to just hold it in place. What you're supposed to do is put the weight on the suspension before you tighten all the bolts.